are watching the Jennylyn Show, and I'm Jennylyn, your host. And as always, I have another handsome, fascinating guest for you. My guest tonight is Peter Detkin, and I cannot wait to begin the interview so he can tell us all the fascinating things he has been and is doing. Peter, thank you so much for coming to the Jennylyn Show.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So, I hope we have enough time to hear all these wonderful things you've been doing and you've done and are doing.
I'm from New York. I can speak very fast if you want.
Okay, good. Let's go for it.
Okay.
So you are from New York?
I'm originally from New York, yes.
Aha. So tell us what you're working on now.
So right now, for money, I am an intellectual property strategist and consultant.
Okay.
I used to be a lawyer. I grew up in New York, as I mentioned, and I went to school in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I was trained as an engineer at University of Pennsylvania. Then I went to law school at University of Pennsylvania, started practicing in New York. Then in 1987, I discovered Silicon Valley, pretty much. I heard Silicon Valley calling, so I came out here. I joined the Wilson Sonsini law firm in Palo Alto.
Right, I know where they are.
Great. I was the first patent lawyer ever to be there, and I became partner there, and I was a partner there for a few years. And while I was there, a recruiter called me up and said, would you be interested in moving to a corporation? At the time, this was, I guess, 94, and this was still Silicon Valley, not Software Valley or Application Valley.
Right.
And I told the recruiter, I said, I'm a partner at Wilson Sonsini. I'm not interested in moving unless the job is with a company like Intel. She said, that's the job. So
really?
So I went over to I joined Intel. I became a vice president there in charge of litigation, licensing, and patents. I ran the IP and patent program there, including antitrust, which was a big deal there at the time.
Right.
And I left there in, what year? 2001, I believe. And I became a founder of an investment company. A company that focused it on investing in invention, which could be the subject of a different topic. That's not what we're here to talk about. But we raised several $1 billion to invest in invention a couple of different ways. We have our own lab. We do our own invention. We invested in other people's inventions. I did that for about 11, 12 years. I left there a few years ago. I'm still associated with Intellectual Ventures. That's the name.
Right.
Right. So I'm still associated with Intellectual Ventures, but I joined up with some friends at Sherpa Technology Group, and we do high-end intellectual property strategic consulting.
Awesome.
That brings you to today.
Awesome. Well, you know, we can talk some more about some of that if
Sure.
we have enough time after we discuss the real reason why you're here with me tonight.
Okay.
And this has to do with gun control and gun prevention, right?
Gun violence prevention,
right.
yes.
Violence prevention. Tell us about that.
So I'm on the board of a few nonprofits, one of which is the Brady Campaign to prevent gun violence. It's named after James Brady, who was President Reagan's press secretary, who was shot when Reagan was shot, and didn't do as well as the president did. Suffered for years from the resulting wounds from the gunshot. He died a few years ago. And that really was the catalyst to some of the gun control laws that you see in the United States, most famously the Brady Law,
right.
which Ronald Reagan signed into law, which limits who can, it's the registration process for acquiring a gun in the United States under federal law. There are unfortunately some loopholes in the law that we are part of the Brady Campaign we're working to try to resolve.
Because lately it seems like it's become a fad. Just getting a gun and shooting whomever is in your path.
It's not that hard for someone who wants to get a gun to get a gun. One of the loopholes, for example, is the so-called gun show loophole. If you wanted to buy a gun, it'd be you have to, if you go to a federal firearms dealer, you have to engage in the so-called waiting period. You have to fill out a form, attest to the fact that you're not a felon and that you meet all the criteria to buy a gun. It is run through a database, and a few days later, assuming you clear, you can buy the gun. However, there are many places, not in California, thankfully California state law has closed this loophole.
Oh, great.
That is great, but unfortunately, we have neighboring states such as Nevada. So there are gun shows there all the time, and someone can go to a gun show in Las Vegas where they freely advertise, no waiting period, don't have to file for, you don't have to fill out any forms, and you can buy any gun you want there and the ammunition and bring it back across the border. This actually, it is believed that that is the source of most of the crime guns, certainly in the Los Angeles area, are guns that are purchased. Usually there's an uptick in crime in the Los Angeles area following gun shows in Las Vegas.
So they probably go to the gun shows and come back with their guns.
Right. People often point to some of the those who are against gun control say, well, look at Chicago. Chicago has the toughest gun control laws in the country, but they have a terrible gun violence problem, which is true. Chicago does have a big problem. But what people don't appreciate is most people are buying their guns in Iowa, right across the border, at a store called Chuck's, and they're bringing them, and we're actually engaged in litigation with Chuck's to try to prevent them from skirting the law. But the fact is that these guns are coming from somewhere, and they're not always coming from the city in which the crimes are being committed.
What concerns you the most from working in this, with this nonprofit?
That's a good question. I'd say what concerns me the most is the lack of dialogue, because if you talk to 90% of the people in the country believe that gun registration is a good idea. 90%. That's a higher approval rating than Mickey Mouse gets.
Right.
But there's a small, very vocal faction of people that believe, and that's what I'm talking about, the registration, just closing the gun show loophole, for example, who believe that that is tantamount to taking away guns. That's really not what it's about. We're simply saying we want to know where the gun, who's buying guns. We're not looking to take them away. President Obama, who was probably the most in favor of gun control of any politician ever, never once proposed that. But because that simply, there is a Second Amendment, and we respect the Second Amendment. But even those on my side of the debate simply want to have a reasoned discussion about the fact that there is a problem in this country. There is a gun violence problem. 55,000 people a year die from gun violence. And yes, you have a constitutional right to a gun, but no right is absolute. Right.
But how do we, a lot of them are probably sold and bought illegally, right?
Yes.
Because don't you do psychiatric evaluations on the people that you're selling guns to?
No. Again, we believe that there should be, again, some registration process to confirm.
Right.
But for the most part, that is not an issue. The only question is, are you a felon? And if you're not a felon, now even if you're on the terrorist watch list, under today's law, you can still buy a gun in a federally firearm licensed dealer, even if you're on the terrorist watch list. And that's something that Republican senators voted against restricting, that very issue.
Well, but that's not true in California, though. We screen our people, don't we?
Oh, again, we do screen, but if you're a felon, you can't buy anywhere in the country unless you go to a gun show. Now in California, even in private sales, you can, I can see I'm shocking you, and most people don't realize this.
Oh my gosh,
in California,
you kidding me?
You can't do private sales without a register. You still have to check, you still have to fill out the forms. But again, if you are on the terrorist watch list, and believe it or not, this is actually we found handbooks, not Brady, but the U.S. has found handbooks and instructions to would-be jihadists saying, it's easy to get a gun in the United States, just go to a gun show.
Well, what is preventing us from implementing those same laws at those gun shows?
Absolutely nothing. Just the U.S.
Is it
Congress.
because of ignorance?
It's because a very vocal minority of people are very afraid of the so-called camel's nose under the tent. They're afraid that once you have a little bit of regulation, the next step is they're going to take our guns away. And again, 90% of America agree that we should have, that they have the same reaction you do. People shouldn't be allowed to buy guns just willy-nilly at a gun show.
Random people, yeah.
Right. But notwithstanding, and this is, by the way, including most NRA members, agree with me on this position. I mean, again, there are more extreme, there are some people who want to abolish the Second Amendment. That's not me,
no.
That's not the Brady campaign. We absolutely respect the Second Amendment. But again, we believe that the Second Amendment, just like the First Amendment. I believe in freedom of speech.
Me too.
I believe it, but you know there are limits.
Right.
The so-called you can't yell fire in a theater. You can't libel somebody. I mean, it's you can't. I believe in freedom of press, but the New York Times still can't publish troop movements. For issues of national security, they can publish. There are limits. They're very carefully circumscribed. There should be very careful limits on all of our rights, including the Second Amendment.
Right.
But there are those that there's a very small but very vocal minority, a very vocal set of people who believe that if you allow even the smallest amount of regulation, that's going to eventually lead to they're going to take away our guns. You're registering them, therefore you know where they are so you can take them away. Isn't that the case? Well, no, that's never been the case. It's something that Obama never suggested. But you know,
well, they vetoed him on almost everything he suggested. He probably thought, why bother?
But it turned out, this is a little known fact, Obama was the gun industry's best friend. You know why? Every time he said something about gun sales, about taking away guns or about registering guns,
more guns were sold.
More guns were sold because they were afraid that he was going to ban high-capacity magazines or the so-called AR-15, that's another issue that Brady is working on, which is so-called assault weapons ban.
How hopeful are you that Brady is going to make any change?
Well, under this administration, it's difficult, frankly.
Everything is.
Well,
don't kill me.
Focusing on, let's just staying on this issue for now. We can. You don't have enough time to discuss the other issues.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is really sad because listening to you, I'm thinking.
Do you want to hear something that's happening today?
Yeah. Tell me.
You want to be sad? I'm going to make you sad.
You ready? A tissue?
Yeah.
Did you guys bring a tissue?
So you know what a 3D printer is, right?
Yes.
It's a wonderful technology.
I had someone on my show talking about it.
Great. Well, unless something happens that we are in the middle of, we filed a lawsuit today to try to prevent this. The instructions for printing guns will soon be on the web.
What?
The ability to 3D print a gun will soon be on the web.
And you can shoot with it?
Oh, yeah. And it's going to be made out of plastic, and no metal detector is going to detect it.
Oh my God, this is really frightening.
Just to show you, and what this goes to the point about this administration. What's interesting is there's this, I think it's called Defense Distributed. I could have the name wrong, but it's Texas. It's a company. It's really two guys and a dog, and I'm not sure they have a dog. It's just a couple of guys in Texas who have the instructions for how to 3D print a gun, and the administration sued them. The Obama administration sued them to prevent it, and won every step of the way. In fact, the Trump administration continued the litigation for a while. And they won. They demonstrated to the court satisfaction that it was an issue of national security that they should not be allowed to distribute this. But about a week ago, the Justice Department changed gears or changed direction, really, and not only settled the suit, they agreed to pay the guy's attorney's fees and agreed that starting August 1st, assuming the settlement gets approved by the court, they can distribute those instructions over the web.
Well, because I don't want anybody to kill me, and because I want to stay on topic,
yes,
I know why. I know why they're doing this. I know why they're changing all these laws, and I'm sure you do too.
Well, I want to hear your theory.
No, not on camera. I'll tell you after.
Okay.
I'll tell you after the show because I don't want anyone following me with a gun. But I noticed that I heard in the news this week why the NRA are so popular. And you know, you hear news, you hear this is fake news, depending on who's reporting the news. It's termed fake news or the real news. I guess it's real depending on your views, your philosophy, the way you look at everything happening now. Because there are a lot of people happy with what is going on in the United States government now. And I drive myself batty trying to figure out what I'm missing because I can't find what it is they're liking. I see more things that I feel is putting our nation on a slippery slope. So I wonder what hope you have, knowing what we know today about the NRA and about their funding and stuff, if what is reported is true. How do you feel working on this cause?
Well, it's funny you should ask that and tie those together because it was actually the Brady campaign that uncovered the connection between the NRA and the Russian funding. It's the Brady campaign.
I'm not surprised.
Through a FOIA request, we uncovered, and we've been working to disclose that. Now, Will that have an effect? That's for the American public to figure out and see if it's something they care about. I would think it does, but I've been very wrong in recent years about what the public would care about.
Yes, so have I.
But
Shocking.
so, frankly, those of us who would like some common sense gun restrictions, we're fighting a rearguard action right now, trying to keep 3D printing guidelines from being printed.
How is that going to be possible?
How to keep it? Well, we filed a lawsuit today asking for an injunction to keep that from being published. And we'll see. It's down in Texas, but this is a judge that determined it was a matter of national security, public safety. It was his phrase, that this should not be published. So we'll see if he's willing to allow us to intervene and make these arguments. So I was just out in your green room checking my email to see if there are any results. I haven't seen any yet.
Okay. Well, because what's scary about that is already anybody could be shot anywhere with what's happening now. And if you're going to make guns on a 3D printer that cannot be detected by a metal detector, it means that we're going to have guns on airplanes now.
Well, hopefully there are technologies that will catch up to the gun manufacturing technology, but
even
that
if
is
it's made out of plastic?
Yeah, again, this is a different show, but actually I'm aware of some technology being used in airport screening that could detect it. We have to do
another show. Because you have children, and I have children, and we have friends with children, and we're all people in the world, and it's not only about you and your children and me and my children. It's about the safety of everyone. And everyone, anyone can be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
That's true. That's true. And that's just one of many issues that we're fighting. Again, the 3D printing, the assault weapons ban. That is something that was the law here in the United States for about 10 years. And studies did show that it was effective. But it expired, and they couldn't get that. That was Dianne Feinstein's law. And she tried. She tried to get it reinstated, but that did not work. One other issue that Brady has three main issues. One is the so-called background checks, the Brady background checks, the registration. Second is assault weapons ban. The third is the extreme risk protective order. Right now, if you determined that that handsome cameraman over there was going through a very difficult breakup, and you thought that he was a little unstable, and you knew he had a gun, you could go to the police and say, this is a problem, and perhaps we should do something. And if the police agreed with you, they can go to a court and have the gun taken away, at least temporarily, until, and they would give him a chance to have notice and an opportunity to be heard, but at least you'd remove the gun from the situation. Right now there's no mechanism. There is a mechanism in California, I should say. There's about 8 states that have that, but there are a lot of states, 42 states, that don't have any mechanism to take the guns out of the hands of troubled people, troubled teenagers in school, folks going through a breakup. Gun violence is one of the main sources of domestic violence. And you can imagine that would be a very useful tool for police to have, to be able to take the guns out of the hands, out of those they felt were too dangerous to hold one. At least, even if it's just an emotional situation at that moment, and they could have the gun back later. And that is something that we're working on pushing. And again, it's something that you think is common sense. And it's something that a lot of people,
fundamental.
It's something that a lot of NRA members would say, yeah, I'm on board with that. But again, you get to that whole camel's nose under the tent argument of, if we allow them to control guns this way, who knows what's next?
Right. Well, the thing is, we want them to have their guns. We just want the guns in the hands of responsible people.
That's exactly right.
A good story that's stuck out in my mind, it's coming to mind now as we speak, is the woman who drove from Los Angeles and went to YouTube with the senseless killings. And the police were notified that she may be a little bit unstable, but I don't think, based on my memory, that she had a gun when she left. But she was able to come drive up here, buy a gun, and go and kill those people. I mean, it blows my mind. Now,
let me address one argument that some of your viewers are going to say, come on, Detkin, you're never going to be able to solve. I don't remember the facts of that sort of situation, but let's look at what happened in Florida. Or protective orders wouldn't have stopped that, or a background check. And the fact is, the things we're proposing would not stop all violence. There's no question.
Right.
But it is documented that background checks.
It would control it.
Background checks have prevented several, I mean, they've been around since, I want to say 88 or 89. I'm not sure of the year, so I'm sorry, I wish I remembered. But they've been around for 20 years at least. And in those 20 years, they've stopped millions of deaths. Or at least they've kept guns out of the hands of millions of people who should not have guns. Now, so is it perfect? Absolutely not. Have people slipped through the system? Absolutely. Are there 300 million guns out there already? Yes, there are. Not much we can do about that. We're not going to be able to get 300 million guns off the streets.
Right.
Will criminals still be able to get guns? Yes, criminals will break the law. That's kind of the definition of being a criminal. But we still have laws, and we still do our best to minimize the problem. To simply turn a blind eye, I don't know if you ever read The Onion, the
Yes.
online. Sadly, The Onion has one article that I think is one of the best things they ever wrote, but they run it every time there's another gun tragedy, which is the headline says, "There's nothing we can do about it," says the only country where this problem ever happens.
Right. I was just going to say, if you look at the countries who haven't got this dilemma, because to me that's what it is, they have gun control laws.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that they never have someone shot, but they are not losing as many people to senseless killings at the hands of people who are psychiatrically off the charts and hasn't been diagnosed, or people who just woke up one morning and think, I don't want to I don't want to live anymore, and I'm just not going to shoot myself. I'm going to see how many people I could take down with me.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy, and I think for being the country that used to be, I don't know if it still is, the superpower, why is it happening here?
Well, we have a unique culture in this country. Maybe it's because of the Wild West, but we are not the same as Europe. We're not the same as Australia. I don't know that if we had the same laws, if it would have the same effect. I won't pretend to be a sociologist who could make those kind of predictions. But I do know that we need to try, and we need to enact some common sense restrictions, such as background checks. It really is. It makes sense that you don't want everybody can agree we want to keep guns out of the hands of felons. We want to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them.
Right.
But yet, in a private sale, in 40 or 50% of the states, a private sale, there's no background check requirement.
I can't believe you could go to a gun show in Las Vegas and buy guns like you buy jewelry at a jewelry show.
Oh, you want me to make it even worse for you?
Yeah, go ahead. Give me the hard facts.
I hate to advertise for the bad guys, but armslist.org or is .com, I'm not sure, but Armslist, the website, you can go on there and they advertise. No background check needed. That's how you get the attention of a politician. You want me to show you how I can get a gun within 3 blocks of here? I just pull up my phone, and I don't know if I could do it here. That's why I don't want to.
Right.
I've been in tech long enough to know you don't do a demo without practicing it first. So I should have done it out there first. But still, it's shockingly easy on the web. In fact, Facebook used to have a page. Facebook did take it down, so kudos to them. If any Facebook employees are watching, thank you. But Arms List it's designed to help get around background checks. And it's also the subject of litigation, by the way, that Brady is doing.
So we're down to less than 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
But before we wrap up, what haven't we discussed that it's important that people know about Brady?
We could use support. I'm sorry to say that.
Yep, they can use support. How can they contact you to support you?
BradyCampaign.org. We are one of the few national organizations working on this issue. We are one of the few with a grassroots organization. There's a Brady California chapter that's very active. So if you want to get involved, I would suggest that you start with the Brady California chapters. They're really a wonderful bunch of people. And frankly, we are one of the few national organizations that has a litigation arm. We think litigation is one key to working the system. The Giffords folks focus more on lobbying, which is great, by the way. They're a fine organization. I know the people there. The president's a friend of mine. Bloomberg and his organization also focuses heavily on policy. We focus a little bit more on trying to get things done through the courts and also through grassroots organizations. We have chapters everywhere, again, including here in California. but these things aren't cheap, I'm afraid. So bradycampaign.org, please, we could really use some help.
Phone number?
It's on the website. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head.
All right, shame on you. But I
true.
must ask you this question.
Yes.
How did you get so passionately involved in this? What motivated this level of wanting to make a difference when other people don't seem to care?
That's a good question. I have not been personally affected by gun violence in my family. I've been fortunate. I've always been kind of interested in the issue, and I always gave but didn't think much about it until the Sandy Hook slayings. I've always believed that government really existed primarily for two reasons: for defense and to help people who can't help themselves. There are many other things government does, which is fine. I'm not a complete Ayn Rand, libertarian, but I always felt the government really needs to step up when it comes to people who can't help themselves.
Right.
And we have kindergarten children sitting in their classroom being gunned down, and still the government wouldn't do anything.
I don't get that.
And I finally said to myself, I've got to see if I can do something.
Well, thank you so very much. When I'm doing these fascinating interviews where I'm learning so much about important topics, the time flies. I'm so grateful that you're doing this, that you took the time to come on my show to share what the Brady Foundation is doing. Please contact him, Brady.
bradycampaign.org.
bradycampaign.org. I am sure everyone has been aware of what's going on with people running around and killing innocent people. I think we all need to make an effort to create change and protect each other. So thank you so much for watching the Jennylyn Show. And as always, I will see you next time with another amazing guest. And thank you so much to my crew without whom I can't produce these shows. And I'll see you next time. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.